Hi, I am Catalina Gutierrez and I'm going to talk about The Portrait of a Lady by James Henry. Now, first of all, I'm going to start with the socio-historical context, then I'm going to talk about the literary context, then the semantic context, and later I'm going to answer the question about who is the British and American citizen according to the author I read. Let's start with the socio-historical context. In North America, the 3rd of August in 1881, the Pretoria Convention Peace Treaty is signed and officially ending the war between the Boers and Britain. In 1884, the International Meridian Conference in Washington, D.C. held to determine the prime meridian of the world. Between 1884 to 1885 Berlin Conference, when the Western powers divided America. Now, the United States had 5 presidents during the decade since the 1840s, and they were Rutherford B. Hayes, James A. Garfield, Chester A. Arthur, I. Grover Cleveland, and Benjamin Harrison. Now I'm going to pass to the literary context. The Portrait of a Lady is a realistic novel. Basically, this means that the events of the novel could all happen quite possibly in the real world that we live in, or the one that James lived in. The author shows life and humanity as they really are, by focusing on an individual life and all the people that touch it. James manages to show us a huge range of human emotion. The novel is narrated in the third person by an unidentified external voice, so the narrator is not a character, nor he is necessarily identified with James himself. The novel point of view is omniscient and often gives us insight of the thoughts and feelings of the characters, but it remains at an objective distance. Although the narrator is frequently critical of the characters and certainly has a quite strong opinion about it, but it abstains from placing over judgment on them. The narrator also makes use of the word like I and we, but we are, as readers, never exactly sure whom these terms refer to. Let's start with the semantic context. For me, as reader, it was very frustrating see the development of Isabel Archer's personality. It was very frustrating because she starts being very independent, and you can see and feel that freedom that departs from her. But when she met Gilbert Osmond and she decides to marry him, well, that's just shocking because that something is twisted between Mrs. Merle and Mr. Osmond. So, well, you start hoping that Isabel realizes that if she marry him, well, that's not gonna be good for her. But at the end, she marry him, and well, she starts seeing all the bad things that happens that she was expecting it from the beginning to happen to her. But it's just very frustrating. See how good she started the novel and how bad she ends up the novel, because she just, well, she ends up being sad. The freedom she begins with, there's no freedom. She feels like living in a cage in her castle in Rome, and well, that's not what you expect from her from the beginning, because well, she's so independent. And when she earns all that money from her uncle after he's dead, after Mr. Touchet dies, well, you just don't expect that. And for me, it wasn't that good novel reading the good book, because what you expect her to succeed in her life, not to end up marry a really nasty man that drops and steals her money and her life. And well, that's my opinion. Let's continue with the writing style. The writing style in the novel is scripted, detailed, and frank. The writing style of Henry James is famously the script, and The Portrait of a Lady is not exception to the rule. People, places, relationships, feelings, basically everything gets the patented Henry James super heavy detailed treatment. This creates a rich, very real feeling world through which we can easily imagine our characters moving. However, despite the long passages of description and long paragraphs, well, James still manages to come off as fresh, frank, and quite funny. The sense of humor often emerges from the details, and well, James knows how to walk the fine line between lyrical and boring by balancing it out with honesty. His dialogue is also pricelessly funny at times, and always has the zingy feel of quick, real-life back and forth. Now, following with the second part of the semantic context, we have the figures of speech. In page 42, we find a personification that states, her imagination was by habit ridiculously active. When the door was not open, it just jumped out of the window. Now, in page 256, we found a metaphor that says, I should like to put a little wind on her sails. According to the literarydevices.net, metaphor is that when a phrase makes an implicit, implied, or hidden comparison between two things or objects that are poles apart from each other. Later, we found in page 389, we found another metaphor which says, it shall be steamy away again. In page 597, we found a handedis. She sat in the still drawing room. According to the literarydevices.com, handedis is the use of two nouns to express an idea when the normal structure will be a noun or a modifier. Next, we find in page 597, the same page, archaism. It's just one word. The word is bait, and according to the literarydevices.net, archaism is which use phrase of word is considered very old-fashioned. And lastly, we found in page 898 a simile, which says, it was as thin as a hair. Well, I think we all know that, but according to the literarydevices.net, says that simile is the comparison between two things using like or as. We continue with the tone. The tone in the novel is critical, yet sympathetic. The narrator's attitude manages to be both distant and interested in Isabel and her dilemma. We get the feeling that the mysterious narrative voice really is sympathetic towards our heroine. I mean Isabel. But still maintains a critical and objective attitude. Then the story describes a direct and straightforward manner when there's nothing tricky or misleading going on here, and reveals each character with a precision that's almost scientific. Throughout the novel, there's a profound sense of admiration and deep sympathy for Isabel, even though the narrator never comes right out the way. And well, Isabel is so admirable, yet unfortunate. To finish the semantic context, we have the themes. In the novel, he explored many of his most characteristic themes, included the conflict between American individualism and European social customs. And the other theme is the situation of Americans in Europe. To sum up, we have the question. Now the question says, who is the British or American citizen according to the author you read? I found online a quote that Henry James said. It is, I think, an indisputable fact that the Americans are, as Americans, the most self-conscious people in the world and the most addicted to the belief that the other nations are in a conspiracy to undervalue them. That's what Henry James said. And that'll be it. Bye!